So the process sounds really rigorous and difficult. And we know that Ivy Plus schools have never been easy to get into, but the pandemic has made it even tougher. Could you please break down the impacts of the pandemic on the application process?
That's a really important question this year, yeah. So I'm going to talk about the class of 2020 and then the class of 2021 and 2022 briefly. So the class of 2020 graduated last year during the first wave of the pandemic in May, and they started college in the fall of 2020. For that class, what happened is their admissions results were fine, but many of them chose to defer, which means wait 1 year before you enroll, and any school will say yes to that. Usually it's 2 or 3%. It was 20% that year. So that meant 20% of all the spots in the class for the class of 2021 were already taken when they applied. So this year became the hardest year ever, and it was really for two reasons. The first one was all the spots were taken by the 20% of deferrals. So if Harvard normally has 1,600 spots, now they have 1,280. That's a huge difference because those are the 300 spots they might give to an unhooked student with a high SAT who might otherwise not have much of a chance. So the chances really became harder because of that. Then there was the test optional requirement. So all the schools except for the University of California system went test optional. They went test blind. And for test optional, what happened is you had a lot of students who would never, ever, ever apply to Harvard or Yale or Stanford, but this year they did because they thought they have just a chance. Normally they wouldn't apply because of their SAT. I have one student this year who has a perfect IB prediction from Singapore, but she took the SAT 4 times and just had nerves and could not get above a 1,300. She got into UC Berkeley because this was her year. You know, she also got into USC. She wouldn't have got either in another year. And good for her. But for most people who've gotten, you know, a higher score, what that means is the higher score is even more important. Because if you're applying test optional, great, you have like a 0.2% chance at Stanford. It's better than 0. But if you apply test optional, you're increasing the number of applicants, you're decreasing the number of spots available. So last year was just a huge dip in admissions rates. And now that things seem to be going back to normal, I don't think the amount of deferrals this year, although I'm still not 100%, will be as high as it was last year. I think it's going to go pretty much back to normal because on-campus lessons are resuming. So if that's true, we still have the test optional effect. Almost all the Ivy Plus are still test optional next year. But it is not going to be so many deferrals. So I think next year will be harder than average, but it will kind of start going back to normal. What do you think?
Well, I think what Collins is particularly emphasizing, this idea of test optional, it's actually something a lot of students really need to think about. I think a lot of students, like what one of Collins' students says is, hey, now this test optional, I'm going to try it, even though I know I wouldn't be able to do it before. So actually, I think for a lot of students nowadays, particularly if they have high aim, they really want to go to good school, don't treat this really as optional. They really need to treat it as, no, it's still part of the process. Just because it's optional, don't make it sound like, oh, that's one less thing to worry about, right? The only one that you really have to be careful is if the school's going test blind, which is a totally different idea. Test blind means that even if you do submit it, they're not going to look at it at all. Test optional means that if you do submit it, we will put it as part of your evaluation. Okay. Now, there's really only a handful of schools that is truly going test blind, like UC, Collin was saying. But even then, it's only test blind for students who are actually living in California.
Okay.
So for international school, they're technically, no, that is not true.
Actually, UC, I'm sorry to correct you, but I'm the admissions counselor, and they had a lawsuit just that was settled like 4 weeks ago, so it's very understandable where everybody would be confused about it, but I have to read this every day. That's my student in Singapore, was a Singaporean citizen, and I had several apply from Hong Kong this year who are not US citizens, and absolutely 100% they will not accept SAT scores. You can send them, they won't look at them, but that also does include international students.
I see. Okay.
So it does apply to us here.
I see. Yeah, but either way, I think it is really, really important that if you know your school is test optional, you got to still do the test.
100%.
So according to you, that is a student necessary to do the standardized test, right?
It's more important.
What is that?
I say it's more important because there's more applicants due to the test optional, and those applicants have a low success rate, but they take spots that in a normal year would go to the person with a median or a higher test score. And you know, if you want to stand out when the acceptance rate is 3, 4, 5%, or maybe 6% at Brown, if you want to stand out in an applicant pool like that, you need to do everything right if you're not hooked. So you're not a legacy, you're not a sports recruit, you really need the test score. Otherwise, your chances are vanishingly small. The only people this helps are people who had 0 chance and they just want to throw off an application to Harvard to Hail Mary. And this is the one year it might work, but it's a very low chance.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the test itself is more important now, particularly because of the increase in applicants. I think thinking of the test is twofold. Number one, the schools see you as taking initiative to actually do something that a lot of students drag, right? A lot of students actually hear that, hey, it's test optional, it's great, I don't have to do this anymore. But the fact that you're still doing it shows that initiative, that you understand this is still important to you. And this test is not a walk in the park. Even though you can still get a very, very high score, but you still need to put the effort in there, right? A lot of students just don't want to do it, and that's why they don't do it. Another thing that you should look into is that schools like to see progression, right? If you do it once, you didn't get a good score, you do it again and you see improvement, and do it again and you seem to keep improving. Schools love to see that, right? Schools love to get students who are actually trying their best to achieve, to get better. So even though they might feel like, oh, I'm not getting a good score, maybe I just shouldn't try it because it's so low. No, I will tell the students, try it again. Put more effort in there. You know you can do this because it is a standardized test. You just need to know how to prepare for it. Show that improvement, it's going to increase your chances to get into these schools.